How are you guys doing this morning?
Good morning, Brent.
That's good. You sound a little bit awake. So who am I? As Justin said, my name is Brent Camilleri. Just a little bit about me. I am a husband. That is my wife, Missy. She's my little pony on the left. I'm also a father of 3 crazy kids. And I'm also, as Justin said, a pastor. I'm a pastor at Deep East Mennonite Church, which means I get to hang out with Justin and Ty Rice on a regular basis. Also, and I've come to discover this recently, I am old. I graduated high school a long time ago. I was looking at the dates that some of you guys were born when Justin was reading off your birthdays today. And I graduated high school when a lot of you were born. When I graduated from high school in 2001, there was no such thing as Facebook. There was no Instagram or Snapchat. There was no such thing as an iPod. I just had to listen to music on a disc man, CDs, those compact discs. So John asked me to speak in your chapel here this morning, and he told me that you guys are in a series on body health. And John asked if I would speak about my experiences specifically related to mental health. And so I thought back to my high school days. Those days all those years ago, and my experiences, or really my lack of experiences, with mental health. You see, when I graduated high school, if you had asked me if I knew anyone in my school who was suffering with mental illness, I would have probably said no. But since then, things have changed a little bit in my life. I've been on a journey, and through a lot of life's up and downs, I have learned a little bit more about the realities of mental health, mental illness, and what it means to live with mental illness as part of everyday life. You see, my amazing wife, my little pony in that first picture, who is a fantastic mom, an amazing spouse, an awesome friend, and an all-around cool person, well, she also suffers from clinical depression. So let me tell you a little bit about her journey with mental health. That's Missy on the left at her graduation from Christopher Dock. Missy is a proud graduate of Christopher Dock, class of 1999. She is a little bit older than me, but don't tell her that I told you that. She's really upset. In fact, I have here that she's a few years older than me, and she read my notes last night and was like, I'm not a few years older than you, I'm only 1 year and 4 months. She got a little upset. Missy had, for most of her time at Dock, what you could probably call a typical Dock experience. She played sports. She went to class. She sang in the choir. She hung out with her friends. But then Missy's junior year happened. And junior year, as many of you know, is pretty stressful. She got really busy. Her classes were increasingly difficult. And all of a sudden, Missy felt like life became this tremendous uphill struggle. Studying became really hard. In fact, some days getting out of bed became nearly impossible for her. And then came these negative thoughts. Thoughts about how she just wasn't smart enough. And that's why it was so hard for her to study. Thoughts that she wasn't attractive enough. Thoughts that she was too weak to pull herself out of the slump that she felt she was in. Thoughts about being too lazy or too worthless to be able to get better. And so Missy started to contemplate suicide every day for months. You know, Missy's told me that during this time, she really began to doubt her faith, because surely if she was a good Christian person, she wouldn't have thoughts like these. In fact, she even doubted her sanity most days. You see, Missy, my wife, was dealing with clinical depression as a junior in high school. I couldn't even deal with girls as a junior in high school. But Missy was dealing with something so much more horrific. And she didn't even know what was going on. She just knew what she felt, and what she felt was that life might be too difficult to go on living. And here's the kicker. No one knew Missy was feeling this way. Her friends didn't know. Her parents and her siblings didn't know. She felt isolated. She felt completely alone. Just the other day, Missy and I were talking through her story, and Missy said that if she had actually committed suicide at this time, she thinks that everybody would have been shocked. Everyone would have been surprised because on the outside, nothing seemed different in her life. She was very, very good at keeping up appearances on the outside. Now, fortunately for Missy and for me and for our family, as her junior year of high school came to an end, so too did this season of depression. She graduated from that, and she went to college at Eastern University, which is only like 45 minutes from here. Anybody going to Eastern maybe? Not a soul, okay. That's too bad. That's where Missy and I met and where I entered into her story. While at college, Missy was able to start seeing a counselor on campus, which was really helpful for her. It let her deal with some of the pain and the fear and confusion that she had experienced in high school. And when Missy and I became friends and when we eventually started dating, she was more free to talk about her experience with depression, and so she shared with me about this difficult time in her life. But as we dated, we pretty quickly discovered that Missy wasn't done with depression either. Missy experienced a few months, about a year after we started dating, where she had severe anxiety. And if you don't know, anxiety and depression can often be two sides of the same coin. They're really good friends, but they're really hard to deal with. Fortunately for Missy, she was able to talk to her doctor about this issue. She got some medication that helped, and her season of anxiety passed. It wasn't until a few years later, after we were married, after we both had jobs and a house, and then had our first child, Morgan, that Missy's depression returned, and it returned with a vengeance. And for a while, we sort of were able to cope with it. I say sort of because we didn't handle it very well. There were a lot of times that got pretty scary. She saw a counselor at this time, on and off, but it wasn't a really good fit. We tried several different medications, but unlike before, nothing seemed to work. In fact, things got worse. Now, I know this sounds sort of bleak right now, but believe me, it does get better, so don't get too bummed out. Honestly, we had some rough years together, where Missy went through huge bouts of depression. She dealt with issues of self-harm, and actually attempted suicide once. And then she would lift out of it for a while, only to dip right back in again. There were a lot of tears and a lot of sleepless nights. But here's the positive part of the story. You see, this was also a time where a lot of learning went on for us. You see, we had to deal with depression and with its effects every day. And so we learned. We learned about the medical reasons for it, about the chemical imbalances that can cause mental illness like depression. We learned about a variety of ways to treat mental illness. Missy saw several different counselors, and eventually she found one that she connects with on a deep level and trusts implicitly. We found medication that's effective for her after a good bit of trial and error. We found support from our friends and from our family and from our church family, who we have tried to be very open with about our struggles. And so fast forward to today, and Missy's doing amazingly well. Now, I would love to tell you guys this morning that she is completely healed and will never deal with depression ever again, but that would be a lie. I don't think that's true. The fact is, we'll probably deal with depression in one way or another for the rest of our lives. But that's okay. Because we know that depression and mental illness is something that with God's help and with the help of a lot of other people, we can handle. It is a lot less scary now. Because we know what it is, what it looks like. We know what we're dealing with. So that, in a very brief way, is my wife Missy's story. It is our story dealing with mental illness. But I suspect that it's a story that, at least for some of you guys, might be pretty familiar. You see, Missy was dealing with mental illness in high school, and I know that she's not alone. Maybe you have friends. Maybe you have a parent or a sibling who are facing something similar. Maybe you are dealing with a mental health issue right now. And so I thought it might be helpful to share with you guys this morning briefly 4 things that we have learned as we've been on this journey with mental health and mental illness. These are 4 things that I wish I had known when I was like you guys in high school. The first is this: mental illness is way more common than we think it is. According to very recent statistics, 1 in 5 teenagers aged 13 to 18 is dealing with or will deal with mental illness. In a room of roughly 370 here this morning, that is 75 of us. That's a big number. Or let's say the majority of your class, whether you're a sophomore or a senior. And all told, 1 in 4 Americans will deal with mental illness at some point in their lives. 1 in 4. So if you look to your right and left and count off 4, including yourself, 1 of the 4 of you will deal with some form of mental illness at one time. I don't tell you that to scare you. I actually tell you that because when we're dealing with mental illness, we aren't alone. There are lots of people who can get what we're going through, and lots of people who can help.